And we are on, and I just want to say hello. I am beyond excited to be able to have this conversation today with the Maria Diaz of Stand Coaching. We are going to have a really interesting conversation today. So I just want people to kind of get a moment to get in, settle in. You may want to grab some tea for this one.
Or a bubbly. I have my Perrier water with some strawberries.
I was going to say, and I just love the lavishing of this glass, which if you see it, it says on it, wait, I have to show it in the camera. It says on it, everything, whatever she takes on, she conquers. But we are just here to enjoy, sip some tea, sip some wine, whatever it is, as we have this conversation about polyamory and what polyamory means. And I really like the idea of thinking about it as, is polyamory the new monogamy?
Wow.
I know it's a big gulp. It's a big gulp. But
it is.
Before we even go anywhere, Maria, please introduce yourself. I always like to give my guests the opportunity to introduce themselves to the audience and let us know what they think.
Okay. So it is such an honor to be here with you, Carrie. I love you, and you're such a light in the world. Thank you for having me here on your platform, and I'm so grateful for your audience here being with us. My name is Maria Diaz, and I am the founder of Stand Coaching, and I guide women to ground into their leadership, their personal power, and their self-expression. So for me, I'm very committed to women thriving in their lives and to living authentically as themselves, very aligned to who they are at the core.
I love that. And I think it's such a powerful message. And not only is it powerful, I think these conversations, especially like the ones we're about to have, really impact that space of womanhood and how we have traditionally been seen in our relationships, in marriage, and how we are in the conversations of that. We need to have more of these conversations. So I was so grateful that you would jump on to do this with me. It's really a space that you were like the first person and only person, if I'm honest, that I wanted to have this conversation with. And with that being said, if you guys have any comments, this is a chat. It's not just a chat between myself and Maria. I want anybody who is in the audience to also feel free, write it into the chat here. We're here to answer any questions, to let you really be open and honest. We're here for you for all of it. And any comments as well. We would love to hear that too. So
all opinions are welcome. All opinions are received. I am someone who, for me, is very important to create a safe container, a safe space for everyone to freely speak. I just wanted to insert that.
I think that is amazing, and it's very true. It is always a very safe place. So anything is welcome. We're here to hold the space for you. And even if you don't want to say much, but just listen, I hope you drink in some knowledge today. So with that being said, Maria, we're going to just jump right in. I believe in that. Let's just take that dive. And my first real question, first thing I wanted to know was, what was your journey into non-monogamy? Like what brought you into this world of thinking about this space?
So back in 2017, as of 2015, after I exited my 20-year monogamous relationship with my ex-husband, I went on this deep journey of self-healing and self-development. So I was determined, I was hungry, and I was ready. And in 2017, I took this program. It was a almost year-long program that's called Wisdom in one of the companies that I do self-development under. And within that program, I started exploring all the shame that I had around sexuality. And I started noticing that for me, there was a lot of shame that came from my parents. You know, I grew up in a strict household in which my parents' sex talk with me was, don't have sex until you're married. That's
Right?
it. It took maybe 30 seconds or else. And, in the Spanish culture, a lot of the influences religiously is the Catholic religion. And so I grew up in an environment where sexuality wasn't discussed. It wasn't something that you did until you got married. And if you did it before, then you were used goods. You were broken. There's something missing now that you took away from your future husband.
Mm-hmm.
You stole that from him. Because it's something, your virginity is something that you gave away to someone.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving forward, I didn't listen to my parents. I lost my virginity at 18. And then I had several partners before I met my ex-husband.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had that underlying, fear and shame around sexuality, I actually lied to my ex-husband about how many partners I had when I met him. I'm like, what's that magic number? I think 2 is the magic number. So yeah, it was 2. When in actuality, it had been 7.
Right.
So
I just want to touch that a little bit. That it's so interesting how we stand up in our society with this kind of idea of the body count. For women, it's not okay to have too many, and for men, it's not okay not to have any. And so what you'll find is that women deflate their numbers, and men will inflate their numbers. So I always find that an interesting space when we talk about body count. But please continue. I'm intrigued. I think that is so a beautiful point that you bring up around that. I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, I think that's something so important. That's a whole show on its own.
Right?
Because that in itself creates so much shame. And we women are shamed to the point that we believe that, I'm used goods. I'm not deserving of love or of something better. I'm not enough. I only deserve leftovers. I'm just going to get whatever I can get.
And I just want that to, I
simmer.
Hear that, right? And I just want to take a moment to kind of massage a little bit and hold a little space for that, because I know that is not a thought that I believe most of us have been in that space at some point. And I just want to honor, the holding, that the deepness that comes from having to process that, even where we're aware or unaware of the space. So I just wanted to hold that for a second. Yeah. Okay. We are strong in it, but I want to hear more. So you were saying,
So with all of that, it all kept adding up. And part of what destroyed my marriage was dealing with that shame, was saying the truth and then having that be what created this huge issue and problem. And so the shame just built even higher and more. And I allowed toxicity. I allowed abuse because I thought I was used goods. I thought I deserved it. I thought I needed to be punished. So I allowed it for years.
Whew. I hear you on that. I really do.
And why I think it's so important for us to share authentically our experiences is because there are a lot of women out there who are experiencing that. I work with women when it comes to them really learning to love themselves and expand that personal power and really connect back to their inner guidance and trust themselves. And I experience it through my clients where, you know, I often say, and I've talked to many women that we are not taught how to have relationships. We are not taught how to enter into relationships. We are not taught how to qualify a partner in the dating process. We just slap it all together. We're like, okay, you know, I feel attracted. I feel the chemistry. I think this is good. Then you start dating, and then you get into the honeymoon phase where you're enamored with someone, right? And then you continue that. And unfortunately, for most of us, I know it was true for me when I used to date when I was younger, that my authentic self didn't show up in the first 6 to 8 months. I was pretending to be whatever I needed to be, so a man would like me, so I could feel like I belonged, so I could feel connected, so I could be appreciated. I could have him like me.
Yes.
And so therefore, by the time you're like in love or like making plans for whatever, you haven't even asked the questions that will qualify whether this person is aligned with you and your values. Why? Because you haven't qualified yourself first. You don't know what you want. You don't know. A lot of the time, like, I didn't know what my core values were until I got coaching around that, until I hired a coach.
And you know, when you think about the enormity of that you hired a coach, and that's like, when did you do that? Where in your journey did that come?
So in that program that I told you about, I took that program in 2017. And in that program is where I started unpacking the fact that there was so much shame around sexuality for me. And the way that started is that, you know, I was still in the process of healing from what my ex-husband and I created, because I take full responsibility. I was in that relationship, and whatever toxicity was there, we created together. He didn't do it on his own. I was there. I was present. So that was the beginning of the journey, is me taking that personal responsibility for what happened. And then in that program, I just unraveled the fact that there was a lot of that that shame that it was just hiding. And I was hiding because I was still single. I wasn't dating yet, but I didn't want to be in a relationship at that time because I was still healing, and my younger daughter was still very young, and I didn't want to bring anything into. I wanted us to continue healing. So, you know, in conversations within that program, I'm like, you know what, but I still want to have something. I still want to, you know, I want to explore. I want to, you know, have companionship and all of this. And somebody said, well, why don't you get a lover? And I was like, what is that? I swear, a 40-something-year-old, like, what do you mean a lover? You know, somebody you make an agreement with.
Right? A friend with some benefits, you know, that kind of an idea. I think that's interesting. I'm giggling with you, but I just want to point out how, you know, for us as women, that can feel a little, you know, just, it's a bit of a reach. It really is something you kind of got to feel into.
Oh, I was like, what do you mean? How do you do that?
Right? But
show me the way.
I was just going to say, but somewhere along the line, it came about, right?
So I continue doing that work and exploring that and having those conversations within that program. And the more that I got into those conversations about lovers and having sexual relationships and all of that, the more this these emotions and this like tightness just kept coming in my body and my chest. And I was just like, oh, I don't know, like, is that even moral? Is it even right? Like I'm gonna be looked at in a negative way, like all of these things that were taught to me along the way. And so the more I explored, I actually, in one of the sessions, I'm gonna share something that's like, in one of the sessions, they said one of the exercises was, if you can go and say anything and everything in the world and nobody would judge you, what would life be like, and what are some of the conversations you would be having? And they put us in groups, and then we could go around the room. There was like almost 200 people. And I was familiar with a lot of the people in there, and we had already been in the program for 5 months at this point. Right. And then one of the ladies in the program, she, you know, we had extensive conversations, and she actually had written a book around sexuality. And she's like, you know, I'm gonna challenge you to go ask a man something sexual, right? Okay. And one of the men in the room, and I picked somebody who was very safe, somebody who was a friend of mine who I knew I felt extremely comfortable to go and ask this of him. Yeah. So I go up to him, and I stand in front of him ready to say what I was gonna say, and the words wouldn't come out. And all I did was freeze, and I just started to cry uncontrollably. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't stop crying. Mm-hmm. And this beautiful woman is standing beside me. She's holding my hand. He's standing in front of me. He's like, it's okay, honey. Whatever you need to say, it's okay. And I still couldn't say it. So she said it for me. And I don't know if anybody has any kids watching, but can I say it, or do you want me to just leave it at that?
I think you should say it. We'll just put a disclaimer on this. If we're giving you a few minutes, if you have kids in the room, you may want to just send them out, or maybe fast forward a little bit through this part and come back later, because you know you're going to want to know what was said.
Yeah. So what she challenged me to say is, can I suck your cock? Oh. These are just words.
Yes.
They are just words. That day I learned how words dominated me, and how shame kept me in a prison cell, and how shame dominated my entire life, not just my sexuality, everything. Mm-hmm. And how I was so muted as a woman. Mm-hmm. And then I went on this journey. After that, I hired a pleasure coach, my coach, Beth. I love you, Beth. I hired Beth. So something that I learned early on in my journey with self-development is that whenever I wanted to work on something and deal with it in the quickest way possible and the most effective way possible, I always hired a coach. Mm-hmm. I have always hired a coach. I'm like, okay, I really want to work on this in my life, but when I do, I know that I'm ready to do the work. So I make sure.
So powerful. I just want to point that out, that you don't have to do, you know, whenever we have to go to the doctor or you're not feeling well, you're going to go to the expert who can really help you move through something. And it's the same thing when you have these kinds of situations, hiring somebody who's an expert at it, because it's so funny. You have Beth, but that's the work that I do about really reconnecting us with intimacy. And my clients come to me because they know you don't have to man this space alone. Mm-hmm. And it's a large amount of space to go with. So I love that you shared that, Maria. I think it's important that you recognize that, you know, we all need coaches. Coaches need coaches. Everybody needs a coach at some point in your life, because you know, when you have some work to do, a lot of the times that teacher will appear, and you just got to tap in. So Maria, let me hear more. So you went on the journey.
So I went on this journey for 6 months with this amazing woman. And at the time, it was called Gourmet sex something. And I was like, yes, it's going to be fun. I'm going to discover a lot. I'm going to be self-expressed sexually. And I was like, what the hell, Beth? All I'm doing is crying and journaling and answering these questions I don't even know how to answer. Like, why are you asking me to do this? What about having fun?
Right? There's no fun yet.
But I learned so much about myself. And then I was able to distinguish the morality of what we are born into.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it look like for me to be aligned to myself and have integrity in my sexuality?
Repeat that out there. Repeat out that question. I think that's so pivotal.
Yeah.
Tell the audience again.
Instead of focusing on whether something was moral or not,
mm-hmm.
Coming from the world of right and wrong, which is what I was born into, I went into that discovery and got curious as to how do I have integrity in my sexuality, and how does that integrity in my sexuality align with who I am and with my soul.
Love it.
And through that, I discovered that, first of all, monogamy wasn't the only option. And I lived all of my life believing that monogamy was the only way to do relationship. There was nothing else. There's no other way but this. So I didn't have a choice. I didn't choose the way that I wanted to create a relationship. The other thing that I learned is that I could create my relationships. Mm-hmm. That I can co-create with someone else, that I didn't have to just fall into something and make do with whatever, mm-hmm. that I could actually ask for what I want, allow for somebody to tell me what they want, and also create together. Mm-hmm. For me, relationships are a partnership. They are the safe, compassionate, and loving, beautiful space where we get to fall down, we get to get back up, we get to mess it all up,
right?
And have this other being that loves us and supports us and is there for us to elevate. So it's also a place where at times you may feel confronted because your partner may say something to have you elevate that you're trying to run away from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. And I want to kind of mention, because, we are so, I love when you mention, that idea that we don't have choice, that mm-hmm. the idea of having this option of being non-monogamous came up, and it was so new, because a part of what we do in the experience of having relationship is, and when we are in just a monogamous relationship, I think there's a heavy onus and responsibility that we put on our partners to be our everything. Yes. And I think when we look at that and examine that piece of the puzzle, it really almost feels ridiculous, because we don't really recognize the pressure. Like our partners become our best friends. They're the providers. They're your your bestie. They're the fathers, the mothers of your children.
Yeah. Sometimes your business partners as well, and everything else.
And it's so much pressure that we put on just that one person and one relationship. So that to me can be triggering.
I agree with you. And the other thing that comes with that I have noticed as well, from having been in my own relationship, is that we come from somebody belonging to us. Like there's this level of possessiveness, and that once I got you, that's it. I don't have to do any work. I can just put my feet up and I'm done, man. right?
I'm laughing because that is so true. That is so true. Oh, you're telling the tea. That is real.
And that's just the beginning of a relationship, right? And the other thing is this thing, like I said, is like your mind. And what does that imply? And for us women, how does that play out for us women? You know, like I was in a relationship where your mind meant that I control all the income. I monitor where you go. I tell you which friendships I don't want you to have.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that, you know, and then we can easily get lost in that and lose our own sense of autonomy, our own sense of being our own selves. Because for me, relationships are not just, it's not just two people coming into one, it's an individual, two individuals or more that were originally individuals that have full-fledged life, like they were living before they met you. We were living and have full lives before, you know, we come together. And so there's three relationships happening. Your relationship with yourself, right? Each partner's relationship with themselves, and then the relationship that you co-create together.
Absolutely.
And we get lost in that co-creation. The self gets lost and it gets diminished. And that's where we become codependent. That's when we have all these attachment issues and more trauma develops in our relationships.
I agree 100%. So the truth. So the truth. And I further to that, you know, you mentioned with women and how we are then, you know, kind of lost in the sauce of it. And then add when you have children into the mix.
Oh, yes.
Right. And, you know, I think it's really a challenge in the way that we have structured the idea of traditional marriage to keep ourselves whole in the look of that. And there's nothing wrong with nurturing our children. There's nothing wrong with us being in those spaces. So I want to just preface with, you know, letting that be front and center. That is our roles. That is our natural, like there's some biology that's happening when we are doing this, because for a woman, she's at her most vulnerable state when she is pregnant and about to have children. And then you have, you know, little people take up a lot of time. But with that, you know, it is a challenge just even to keep the balance, you know, let alone wash your hair sometimes. There's other challenges in just being able to know who you are as a person when we're dealing with, you know, this idea of the traditional marriage and the pressures that really fall on us. And Maria, with that, I'm curious to know, so you realized all of this, you had that moment of, you know, coming to know that there was so much of your shame wrapped up around your sexuality, and you hired the pleasure coach. But what took you into that next stage, that next deep dive? Because it's a deep dive.
It was having conversations, and I'm gonna read you a little paragraph of this book. It's called The Art of Open Relating.
Okay.
And so when I started looking into, there's this thing called polyamory, there's this thing called open relating, there's this way that you can co-create a different type of relationship, a different structure to your relationship. So before I read that, I want to say something that was really powerful for me to listen to. And that is that we have this notion that love is monogamous. And that monogamy is love. Whereas love is an actual feeling and an emotion. Monogamy is a rule, a structure, a legal contract. You know, the marriage is a legal contract. So that's very distinct and separate from what love is, but we've meshed it into that. If you're going to be monogamous, then it's a valid relationship and it's a loving relationship, because being in a monogamous and being sacrificial and committing to just one person for life is love.
Yes.
But love is an emotion.
Ah.
Because see, if that's how we're gonna, if that's the definition of love, then what are the emotions that we feel towards our parents, towards our children, towards our friends, towards everybody else in our lives, our business partners, our, you know, mentors, our coaches, like, you know, where does that all fall?
Well,
that all of that is called relating.
Right? And
Anytime.
I love you mention it. I'm so glad that you're mentioning this because it's real. And I think that we have to then examine that structure. Where did that association come from? Mm-hmm. And I think it's valid to mention that the idea of the traditional marriage really was fostered after the agricultural age, mm-hmm. when it became about, you know, setting down roots and having to hold on to property. You know? And so, you know, yeah. What happened was when we started taking on property, you had to be able to work that land. So you needed mm-hmm. children or your lineage to be able to pass it on to one, mm-hmm. as well as having workers for that space. And though that also switched up what we as women started showing up as like a commodity in that yes. way, because men, you know, needed to have them. And last time we checked, they can't do it. So they need us for that job. And so
it was like, mm-hmm. it became like, it was this contract yes. where women traded sex and fidelity for goods and services, for protection, for safety.
And let's be honest, when you look at marriage, it is mm-hmm. a transaction. It is very transactional. And I think that to make it a little more palatable in some ways, mm-hmm. we've kind of had to add this piece of romance. Do you get what I mean? Like this idea that, you know, your prince will come, that your husband is going to be the rescuer, because
mm-hmm.
we
have this notion that somebody's gonna complete us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like there's something missing over here with me. Yeah. That somebody has to complete me. Right? So then we insert that in the mind that I am not whole and I'm not complete. There's something to fix. There's something to fill. There's an emptiness over here with me.
Yes. And so were you aware of those thoughts when you started to look at this idea of polyamory? Was that kind of something you were thinking that maybe this would complete you? Like, were those ideas attached to that?
No, I was really, really walking away from all those ideas, because from what I learned, what I experienced, and how I thought relationships were, and what I thought love was within my 20-year relationship, I really got to see that we both were codependent, and we were, you know, like it was coming from this attachment that was unhealthy, because attachment is healthy depending on how, you know, you do it. And I think that the most crucial thing going into any relationship is the work that we do on ourselves to really nurture the relationship that we have with ourselves.
Yes.
And that's the starting point for any healthy romantic relationship that we have, is what is the relationship that I have with me? How do I love me? How do I nurture me? How do I talk to myself? How do I treat me? How do I acknowledge me? How am I my own best friend? Because I am the longest relationship I am ever going to have, the longest and the most intimate. I have to live with me. I can't run away.
Right.
I can try, but guess what? It doesn't work.
I think that's worth repeating. You know, when we think about, and most women, we are also very trained to believe that our sexuality is not our own, that we are really just for the pleasure of others. And I think when you can readjust that thought and really drink in what Maria just said, and I think it's gold, that you are the first and the most lasting relationship you're going to have is an intimate relationship, is the one that you have with yourself. And so when you can love yourself completely, and that is in all ways, especially sexually, especially knowing what pleasure brings to yourself, it becomes a powerful space for you to be able to go out and not just fill your well of love, but also be able to offer love when we go out into the world. So I love that you brought that front and center, Maria.
I agree with that completely. And I just want to insert that in this conversation that we're having, I am not saying that monogamy doesn't work or it's bad or it's wrong. I'm saying that the way that we have been doing monogamy, it needs a huge upgrade.
Right.
It does. It needs a huge upgrade. It needs some tuning. It needs some painting. I don't know. You need to throw some some love into it, because I think that what's missing is the communication, the open and honest communication. We enter into these relationships out of having somebody else validate us and out of fear of losing something or losing someone, and that has us do things that don't honor ourselves.
Yes.
And we end up feeling resentful.
And I love that you are, once again, you're just dropping gems all the way around. There's a lot of times when, as you mentioned, monogamy, we're not saying, some of us are swans, and I always say that. So I'm going to put that and preface what I'm about to say with that. Some of us are swans, and we are meant to mate for life. And I've seen the beauty that can come from that space. So I honor it. However, I think there's some truth to being said that when you are in the experience of loving, it can expand and change and evolve. And, it's an offering, not just to yourself or to your journey, but also to our partners, when we are loving from a place that doesn't necessarily feel about duty, or we're loving from a place that hasn't been closed off to our truth and our sensuality because we've gotten stuck somewhere in the mix. Do you know what I mean with that?
Yeah, I agree. Because see, when we do it that way, and we're just operating from trying to please somebody else and to keep someone, we lose the awareness of knowing ourselves fully. See, if you were to ask me, what are some of the habits that you have that have you get stuck in life? I can tell you. And if somebody were to ask me that on a date, I would tell them right away, because see, I'm not afraid of my shadows. I'm not afraid of the parts of me that don't work. Why? Because I have the awareness. And I always tell people, I'm not perfect, and I am far from perfect, and I will make mistakes. What you can count on me on, though, is because I've done the work and I have the awareness, is that I will recognize the mistake and I will definitely take responsibility for it. And I won't be afraid to have the difficult conversation about the way I effed up.
I love that, because that's the way that you garner yourself to that space of healing, and not just yourself either. The person that may have been hidden, right?
And that is the key to deep intimacy in a relationship.
Gotta snap that one. Gotta snap that one. I think that is so amazing and true. And so, what was the experience like for you when you went there?
Reading parts of this book and having conversations like really opened up. Like I was like, that's me. That's how I want to do relationships. I'm gonna read you just a little part that was like, wow. So it says, open relating is a state of being in which you're taking personal responsibility to live your life as an authentic, accountable, and free human being.
Mm.
It means being responsible for finding your happiness and not blaming others for your lack of fulfillment or accomplishments. It means not allowing others to define who you are or what you should do and calling it compromise or duty.
Mm. Love that. Love that. If that don't make you think, if that doesn't give you a little bit of chills, people, we sit in those kinds of thoughts and it can feel a little uncomfortable. But if you can just open up to just be willing to dissect that, it can be very powerful for you. So Maria, when you read that for the first time,
it gave me chills. Because I was like, I could actually have that kind of freedom. See, I was in a 20-year relationship where I couldn't be myself and I was afraid to be me.
Mm.
And I lost myself so much that when I ended that relationship, I didn't even know who the hell I was.
I get that. Mm-hmm.
And it took me a year and a half to finally ground back into me. And I am not going to give that up.
I was going to say, you're not looking back. You are definitely not looking back. And I think that, there's so much to be said for offering up your story and this beautiful journey that you have been on. And so now, like when you, like, how do you practice non-monogamy? Like, what does that even mean? Let's kind of break down the terms. Like,
so for me,
non-monogamy and polyamory, what do they mean for you?
Okay, so non-monogamy means that you can choose to have more than one partner.
Yes.
You can relate with more than one person at the same time. And there's different ways people co-create those types of relationships.
Yes.
There's polyamory, there's complete open relating, which means in open relating, it's completely free. You don't have to go and tell your partners how many other partners you have. One thing that I want to clarify, because that's a question that I get asked often, is, are you doing this so you can have more sexual partners, so you can have more sex? Like, are you just looking for an orgy? Are you just looking to explore sexually? And you don't need to be non-monogamous to explore sexually, let me tell you. There's plenty of opportunities. A lot of people that I have met in this arena of non-monogamy have done a lot of work, because you really have to know yourself, love yourself, and be grounded in yourself to be able to have the capacity to have these type of relationships, because jealousy comes up. Time commitments come up. How are we going to structure this? Like, who am I going to see? Like, what if somebody is feeling like they're not getting enough time? And, I have my work and I have this and I have that. How do I want to structure my relationship? All of these things. And not every partner has to be somebody that you're sleeping with, that you're having sex with. Some of these partners are just, people that you have such, you don't need. Sex is not intimacy. Sex is not intimacy. And I seek intimacy, and I am a very sexual human being, and so sex comes in it. But at the end of the day, the most valuable thing to me is those deep, intimate relationships where I get to have those powerful conversations. So for me, the way that I want to create my relationship. So I've been in 2 non-monogamous relationships in the past 2.5 years. Before that, I had lovers. So the first one, it was me and my partner, and we had other partners, right? And we openly talked, like, we would be coordinating. He's like, oh no, I have a date this weekend. I'm like, okay, what about this? And it's like, yeah, I'm out on a date. And then he would share with me. He's like, oh my God, she was awesome, and I learned this, and we did this. I'm like, okay, great. I practiced dealing with jealousy.
What
does that look like? And I was like, okay, I'm jealous. And then he would say the same thing, but we would talk about it. We would discuss it. It would just be something beautiful that we would just learn from and expand from. It wasn't this thing about, oh my God, you know, you're doing something wrong. There was nothing wrong. It's like, these are emotions that I'm feeling. I know for myself, when I feel jealous, is because I'm feeling there's something around worthiness for me.
Ooh, you hit
I'm
it.
feeling like somebody's better than me.
Yes, you hit it.
And that's why I feel jealous. Like, that's what it is for me a lot of the time. So, but I know I have that awareness. So I'm like, okay, let me go and explore. Why do I think this person is better? And like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I making up these stories? Like, you know, and it has me learn more about me.
I really want us to touch and flesh this one out. You know, one of the emotions that we as a society don't like to talk about very much is the idea of jealousy, and yet, or the feeling or the sensation of jealousy. And yet it is something that is so prevalent, but it's one of those unacceptable emotions. Do you know what I mean? So what
we need to hide it.
Yes,
doesn't
you
exist.
push it away, right? You push it away. And one of the beautiful things that you mentioned, and I think your story really highlights this, is the way that you get to sit in it. You had to really sit in that emotion. And what you would discover from the experience of it was, as you are now on the other side of it, that you can be on the other side of it, that it is an emotion like anything else is. And that, you know, when we stomp down those feelings, you know what I mean, we stomp them out, what it actually does is create a void. It creates an even deeper sense of not being in our truth. Whereas when you're in a relationship that is in, you know, non-monogamy, and you're dealing with others, partners, and your own others, and how and what your placement is, that allows you a chance to explore the depth of that, and then to be able to not just explore it, really conquer that space. You know what I mean? It no longer becomes this, because to me, jealousy is also attached to shame. It's one of those things,
very much.
Right? Like, you're not supposed to feel it, but when you have to confront it head on and get a space to offer each other comfort in it, because that's what it sounds like you and your partner did.
And the other thing that we do when we feel jealous, we start blaming the other person.
Right? That sense of needing them to make it right. Right?
Yes, because they did something wrong. If I feel jealous, it's because you did something wrong.
And really, when you
no ownership over here.
Right? When you go deeper, you have to really self-examine what that is. And as you so beautifully pointed out, it normally is wrapped up in some sort of sense of unworthiness. And that isn't something that anybody else can really fix for you. That is really something you have to be willing to do the work to go in with. So I agree. Like, it sounds like your experience with polyamory, or even, you know, just being non-monogamous, really opened you up to having to deal with a level of your own emotional status and state. And so with that, right, what did you find after, you know, you kind of were in these experiences? What did it bring up for you emotionally?
Oh my goodness. So I'm going to bring it back to my last relationship. I was in a throuple. I was in a relationship with a man and a woman.
Yes.
And wow, that was really something. It was a beautiful, committed, like loving. It was full. It was sprinkled with so much emotional intelligence that it used to, like, just the thought of it, I was like, woo. And what I learned in that relationship, you know, was surrender. I had surrender because, again, I came from a strict household, and to a toxic relationship, then I had this notion of surrendering, like giving up, giving in, somebody taking away my freedom, like somebody dominating me. And so for me, surrender has been one of those things that are like, hell no.
I get it.
I'm gonna stand planted. I am not gonna surrender to you.
Right. And I think that's, that is a space a lot of us sit in, right? You're talking something, I'm listening and giggling because I know that's been a thing for me. So I get that. And so where did you go with it?
I experienced, so I'm very fiery, I'm very outgoing, I'm like, my energy is very wide and strong. And in that relationship, I learned surrendering in a way that I could actually embrace having somebody like I could trust, having somebody, I'm looking for the word, hold this safe space for me, as he encouraged my development of what it looked like for my fire, instead of it being the fire that burns, to be the fire that's a warm blanket, that is expansive and very powerful without burning.
Ooh,
and yeah and
sounds delicious.
And I experienced with both of them, I experienced this level of like having these two beings love me and nurture me. I got nurtured and I got loved and listened to. And the level of conversations that we had were always very authentic, very honest. And we created this thing that if one of us was off, like if something was happening in our lives, then we would stop, and the three of us would be there with the support. It wouldn't be like, oh, okay, something's going on with you, okay, we're gonna go off here and do that. It was like, no, whichever one of us needed the support, like the other two would be right there. The other thing that I learned how to support their relationship. Like, I stood grounded for their relationship to grow and nourish and be expansive. And how can I support? How can you both just like build more intimacy and closeness, and to be able to love two human beings and at the same time be there so that their love can grow more and feel happy for their love growing more, was unlike anything.
That, to me, what that sounds like, what I'm reading from that, or what really touches me, is I'm hearing you say it was not almost, it was unconditional love. It was an experience of being able to not just, as you mentioned, hold space and be in the comfort of love, so you're receiving it. There also is this element of selflessness as you're holding the space for them to be able to foster their relationship and their love. So in my mind, there's so many elements of wholeness that you and your other partners would have gotten from that space. What for you, what happened? Why did it run its course, if you don't mind sharing?
One of my partners chose that the relationship, it wasn't for them anymore.
Yeah.
And and I went, when that happened last October, I went into this process of healing, of learning. And something that I want to bring up that I think is extremely valuable is that we think that when relationships end, that the whole relationship was a waste of time. And, I just, I'm hurt and all of these things, right? And we often miss the beauty of everything that we learned and everything that we experienced. See, I don't regret anything because I got loved, nurtured, and appreciated and nourished, and I was able to do that for them. And so for me, it was a successful, beautiful relationship that all that happened is that it ended.
Right. And I want to just, I'm glad you married it up, because this is kind of what you did it beautifully. Didn't have to lead you into it at all. I think it's important that we really touch this, that this sense of that a relationship has to have some sort of a
length, like
right, and that longevity really merits or marks a successful relationship. When in all actuality, I know relationships that are long term, but those people are not happy, or nor does the marriage or the relationship serve them. Whereas what you just described so beautifully just made me tingle, because you were so enriched by the experience of the relationship, and you can pull out just so easily with just so much. I can still sense the love.
Yeah, I love them very much.
Right?
They're two humans that the universe brought into my life that taught me, and that I was able to share with and learn with and grow and expand with. That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
And I am not going to diminish that because it went this way.
I think that is powerful. And this sense of that relationships have to be one way. I think you just really offer that it can look different ways and still offer us space and truth. And so with that, Maria, like, what do you see are some of the advantages and or disadvantages to being in a non-monogamous relationship? What do you think?
For me, the advantages of being in a non-monogamous relationship is that I have found that the people who are in that arena do a lot of self-development, and there's a high level of emotional intelligence. That's what I personally have found, because I relate with other people who practice ethical non-monogamy. So it's about putting integrity in, which means there's a lot of communication, there's a lot of truth and honesty, because you can do it without integrity, and you can still have cheating happen in polyamory and open relating.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely. So why it's so valuable to me is because I put integrity into the way that I relate to others, and I communicate everything, and I'm honest and I'm truthful. And then that's what I co-create with other people. And so when we come from that space of being truthful and honest, it for me, I feel such a sense of freedom, and I feel connected to myself, and I know that I can just love. I don't have to worry that my partner is gonna get angry, jealous, possessive, and all kinds of things because I look at another man and I say that he's good looking.
Right.
I have that freedom. I've been in my relationship with like, oh my God, what a gorgeous being. And I say that about men and women. Right. I go up to men and women all the time and I'm like, you're so hot. I just wanted to tell you that. And I just walk around with this big smile, right?
I was gonna say, really, that I do the same thing. That's why I also am giggling, because I do the same thing. And it's so amazing how when you do just offer that gratitude and appreciation on the physical plane in that way, that it comes back and you will put smiles on other people's faces, right? Because we don't, I think, offer that freeness sometimes enough. And it really does make a difference. And I know that in my own experiences with it too, I love that you shared that you found that it's with people with high emotional intelligence. That has been my truth as well. That because to be in a polyamorous scenario, whatever it looks like for you and your partners, you're right. It does take that space of awareness to be able to do it ethically. If an ethical non-monogamy is just that, it's being open and being completely transparent in the way that you are practicing and holding space for yourself and your lovers. I giggle about right now my partner and I are not in we're what we call monogamish.
Yeah.
Right, we are open to it, but right at this moment with COVID, we haven't been practicing or met that special someone at the moment.
Mhm.
But what I've really discovered lately is doodle, like a doodle poll. To me would be a perfect tool, and I actually in my polyamory communities will pump that, because it's a beautiful tool to be able to put together arrangement and time that works for everybody who's involved.
Yeah. Doodles is really good for that. I agree.
Right, Doodle is a meeting. It's a meeting. What am I calling it? A meeting tool that allows you
Yes.
to arrange meeting times. If you have a group of people who want to get together and put together a meeting. So if you've never heard of Doodle, if you're polyamorous or non-monogamous, that is a tool you definitely need to be touching. But with that being said, to be able to even do that, right, you have to be able to hold space for everybody. And that does take that self-knowing. You've got to be very confident in yourself, in your sexuality, and in all of those things to be able to do that, right?
Yes, and something that I continue to be able to practice a lot more consistently in that arena is to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Is to get comfortable with the uncomfortable conversations, with the uncomfortableness of life, with the unknown, and with what other people are going to say about you.
Yeah. Which takes me into the next question. What did your family and friends say when you decided to dive into this lifestyle?
When it comes to my friends, I have a lot of friends who have done a lot of self-development, and they're very open-minded.
Yes.
And they just ask a lot of questions.
Mm-hmm.
And they learned a lot through me, and they're like, oh my God, I love that you're being you, and that you're being honest about it, and that you're very open about it. You're not hiding anything. And that took time. I didn't begin that way. Right. It took time for me to practice having conversations, to start feeling comfortable, to be out there and just be public and be okay with talking about it. Right. That took time. When it came to family, some of my family members, some of my siblings were okay with it. They're like, okay, it's your life, do you? Right. There was a certain level of respect, right, between us. I never told my dad.
Right.
So my dad, okay, the thing is my dad is my Facebook friend, and he sees all of my posts, and obviously I posted my relationships, and like it was all there.
Right.
You could read if you wanted to, but I haven't had that conversation with him, and that's something that I haven't had the courage to do, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I hear you.
With my ex-husband, he didn't talk to me for about 3 weeks. Like, the man has never been somebody who doesn't have something to say. He walked out of my house without having anything to say. He was like, what happened?
I was gonna say the one time you got him dumbfounded, numb. He had nothing
Absolutely.
to say.
He was just like, I don't think so. That was last year, and it took him a few months, and although he doesn't agree, he has his own views and opinions. Again, because we have that mutual friendship and that sense of respect, right? It's not taking away. And then, you know, in that last relationship that I had, you know, my partners and their kids and my kids, like we were a family, we were a community, we did everything together. Therefore, when my ex-husband asked my daughters, you know, what is your experience with what's happening with your mom and the kind of relationship that she's in, they were like, it's great. My younger daughter's like, are you kidding me? I have two more people to support me when I need something, to have conversations. Like we do a lot of stuff together, and you know, like the kids got to know each other, and you know, it was family based.
Yes.
Right? It was community and family based. To the three of us, family was the most important thing. And so integrating our kids and making them the focal point was very important. So he got to see that. And I haven't asked him, but I will. I think that shifted a little bit of his idea of, oh, you're just having a sexual relationship. This is not a relationship. That's what he said to me. It's not a relationship.
And you know what, I love what you shared. I have a similar space where it's interesting, you know, all of my family is on my Facebook as well, so they know the work that I do.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, my mom and my dad, and you know, all of my aunties and my mother. On my mother's side, there's like 11 of them. And on my dad's side, there's another 6 of them with him. So there's 7 on one side and 11 on the other. And I think that, you know, while they may not all say it out loud, I have had some of them approach me and say, wow, okay, but it is your life. And I think that what happens is, as you mentioned, you know, those around you who are going to love you will maybe not agree, but they are open to hear it. And you know what I found too, just like you, Maria, I got a lot of questions. You know, I'll get people coming into the DMs and be like, you know, aunties and uncles, and asking advice about certain elements of these arrangements. Because if we're honest, Maria, you know, we know that these are happening in what are supposed to be monogamous relationships. Yes. It's not unusual that, you know, you'll have the wife and then there's the side chick, you know, or there's the mistress, or, you know, there's the woman and she has a pool boy. I mean, those things can happen in the space of a marriage. And when you are non-monogamous or polyamorous, what you're doing is just simply taking some of that, the stuff that really can be painful, you know, away and out of the equation, and you're doing it openly and the other people that are involved in consideration. And that's what makes cheating such a challenge, is because you're not, it's not consensual. You're not allowed that consent to be in that space. So I think that it's true, because I didn't told my daddy about my stuff neither. I know he knows.
But you know what? It was a year ago. I think it was a year ago around this time, or maybe no, it was around March, that I posted a naked picture of myself on Facebook with a huge write-up, because I really wanted to touch everyone's heart when it came to body image. I think that's a huge topic on its own. And I had cancer in 2014, and I removed my right breast. So I have a scar from here to here instead of a breast. Sure. And for a woman, you know, her breasts are part of her sexuality. So that was another journey I went through when it came to body image. And so I wanted to show women that you can feel sexy, beautiful, no matter what the shape of your body is. It's not only your body, it's the essence of you and how you carry yourself. That's what's sexy and beautiful. And so for me, you know, that was the first time I ever did something like that. So it was a little scary. And you know, like it was well received, because my message behind it was, you know, to release the shame that we have around our bodies and to embrace all of us. Like I embrace, you know, the cellulite on my legs, you know, my thicker arms, like however I am today, I love me.
Yes.
And yes, I have plans and whatever, you know, working out, having an ideal weight that has me feel energized and optimal for my life and what I want to do. But not necessarily being there today does not take away anything about my worth and my confidence and who I am and my sexiness. It does not take any of that away, my sensuality. Absolutely not. And so I wanted women to rediscover that for themselves. And you know, so my daddy has seen my naked pictures. My family had a cousin. He's like, "Oh my God, cousin!" He sent me this Spanish message from El Salvador. He's like, "Cousin, there's naked pictures of you on Facebook." I'm like, "Yeah. Did you read the post? You can translate it."
And see, I love the power in that, Maria. I just want to commend you and hold that space because it is an important message. I think that, you know, we are honoring that you have come through such a unique and special journey. And please, if you are, you know, really touched by what we are talking about today, go ahead and take a look at Maria's page. You'll find it on Facebook. I actually have seen the picture. And I know that for me, I was like, what a sexy ass woman. Because to me, you epitomize what is the truth of our sexuality. That sexuality is a state of mind. And that when you are willing to embody, just as your message was saying, the wholeness of what your femininity is not more than just a couple of, you know, body parts, but yet is the sensuality of your mind. You create this dynamic being and you literally like just pop off a page. You know, anybody who has had the pleasure of having a talk with you can see that. You know, you are so grounded in the truth of who you are. And I know that it's come from a lot of the work you've done, but also you now are in this position to share such a deep message. So please make sure you check that out. She is an example that every one of us needs to have in our lives. And just to hear, just to feel and be in that space only bolsters us as we see fit. So I just want to big you up in that way. And with that, you give me another great segue. When we talk about polyamory, my love, what do you think it means for the divineness of women? Does polyamory serve us?
Oh my goodness, does it ever? Because this is the arena where I have played, in which I am so encouraged to be in my feminine energy. And it is actually desired. It is embraced. It is, yeah, it's welcomed.
Right? And I don't know about you, sorry to interrupt you, but just with that thought that you're mentioning, I've also found that there's a sense of almost the pressure being off. Like it's less performative in ways I've found. You know what I mean? Like I can be in that feminine energy, and when I surrender to it, there's a wholeness about that surrender that strips away any of the, you know, I got to make sure I'm pleasing someone or you know, I'm angled right. Do you know what I mean? Like some of that is,
you know what, it actually opened me up to, for example, I'm back to being single. Yeah. Right? I took 6 months to really heal.
Yeah.
I mean, I did this book that's called Conscious Uncoupling. I recommend it to anyone who has completed a relationship, because let me tell you a sentence that's going to rock your world.
Yes.
Your next relationship does not begin with when you find your next partner. Your next relationship begins with how you end with this one.
Yes.
Doing the healing work to complete a relationship to learn from it, to acknowledge your part in it, to take responsibility for it. It opens you up to then be able to invite something else into your life without carrying the baggage from the past into your next relationship.
Love this. I really,
So,
that is going to be, so you just gave us another conversation.
yeah.
Conscious uncoupling is something that I actually hold in my space with couples that I work with as well. And let's do a conversation. Next one, girl, me and you, conscious uncoupling. So stay tuned, everybody, for that one as well. But go ahead. You were saying, so
it's amazing. So I did that, right? And then I took 6 months, and then I'm like, okay, I'm ready to just, I'm like, right now I'm working so focused, so intentionally in my business. We're in the middle of COVID. So I'm like, I have, some past lovers that are just waiting for me to just dial. And I said, I'm gonna qualify them. I'm like, this is what I want right now, and this is what I need, and this is what will nurture me. So I said, I looked at it and I said, okay, I want a lover, first of all, that is aware of Tantra, who will practice Tantra with me. I want a lover who's spiritual. I want a lover who has emotional intelligence. This is what will nourish me right now. This is what I'm looking for. And instead of me just jumping into something, I'm like, I'm going to take applications. Because right now I just want one lover.
I love.
I've had more. I've had the maximum I've had, I think, is like 4 at a time, 4 or 5 at a time.
And that's busy.
But right now, that's a full-time job. So I was like, no, one is good. One is real good.
I love that. That's another point, that you can flow with this, right? It doesn't have to mean that you're set in stone if you're monogamous, right? Or non-monogamous. It doesn't mean that it has to be at every stage of your life. I agree. Like my partner and I, we've had partners before and, went through that phase. But right now, we're okay, because as you said, COVID is a big one. Focusing on business, all of those things, life can happen, right?
I have a granddaughter, so
right,
she's the center of my world right now. So I'm focusing on family. I'm focusing on my business. I'm focusing on my clients. And the thing is that there's nothing missing for me, because I'm whole and I'm complete. I'm just as happy single as I am in a relationship. And that's a very important thing to distinguish. I don't invite a relationship into my life because there's something missing. I don't invite a relationship into my life because there's something missing here with me. I invite one because I am ready to co-create, to flow, and to expand together.
That gives me chills. And what a wholeness that brings to your world. If you have been listening all the way through, I want to thank you for staying on board and being into the whole place of this all the way through. But I just also want you to get that to me is such a gem, that no matter how you're in the experience of relationships, it is so powerful when you come from the wholeness of you. And then when you step in, are ready to embrace and embody the love, the companionship in all those facets of a truth to yourself. Yeah. We have been at this for a little while, an hour and a bit. So I want to just kind of hold it here because I think this was so powerful. But I want to also thank you again for just coming in, for being so candid and authentic, for sharing your truth with all of us. tell these wonderful viewers where they can find you again. I'm going to make sure it's posted as well, but please let me know. Well, let them know. I already know. Let them know where they can find you.
You can find me on Facebook under Maria Diaz or Stan Coaching. You can find me on Instagram under Stan Coaching. And I'll leave my handles on the comments.
Yes.
For my programs, and I also have a Facebook group, a private Facebook group that I'm in the process of completing, where I'm going to be sharing a free masterclass, and I'm going to be inviting all these beautiful goddesses to join me for us to grow and expand together, because I'm really out to cause the expansion and growth of women, and for us to ground back into ourselves and to live a life that we absolutely love and that we thrive in.
Yes. And
thank you, Carrie.
You are so welcome. We're going to just end that right there. Everything will be in the comments. Thank you all for attending this. It was an amazing talk, Maria. And you guys look out and stay tuned, because we are going to talk about conscious uncoupling. I think that's a conversation that will be powerful as well. Y'all have a fantastic night, and we are out. Bye.
Bye. We love you.